morning, Host and Valley Unitarian Universalist Church.
Good morning.
Happy Sunday. I'll wait for a couple seconds until you get to your seats. And I think most of you know me, but for those of you who do not, I am Rachel. I'm your volunteer choir director at this lovely facility. There's a few announcements I have for you before we raise our voices in song for the opening hymn. The first one is our services are filmed, so if you do not want to be filmed, make sure that you are sitting in the scent-free zones. They are marked in the back corners here. Feel free to get up during the opening hymn and move if you're seated in an area that might be on film. Don't hesitate to go where you're most comfortable. If you're visiting the church for the very first time today, you are especially welcome. We have our visitors table back here where you can come and sign in and get some more information about our facilities. And also, if you have young ones, there are some activity bags back there for them. Our services are going to be filmed, so please silence your cell phones. I think you'd rather hear what we have to say instead of your lovely ringtones. But with that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to welcome the choir up here to join us in our opening hymn, number 1007 in your Till hymnal. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Wanda Earp, and I'm your service leader this morning. I see new faces, and I see very familiar faces, and I say welcome to each and every one of you. I thought these words by the UU minister, Tanya Marquez, spoke very loudly of our being here together, and she writes, "Is it a wonder and a mystery that our paths have crossed? That in the immensity of time, in the vastness of space, we coincide here? I am in awe at the ways in which our lives intersect and intertwine, at the beauty we create of just being together. May our coming together make us more compassionate, more just, more caring, and more loving. May our hearts and minds be open to this offering, so I am so glad that you are here. Let us worship. Let us marvel at the miracle of being here right now and the mystery that has brought us together. Blessed be. Today, we have a guest speaker, and many of you have heard him in the past, Michael Woods. Michael serves as the chaplain of the inpatient mental health unit at James Quillen Veterans Hospital in Johnson City. And he spends most of his days with mentally ill, traumatized, morally injured, addicted, homeless, suicidal, and often homicidal veterans. And he loves it. In his spare time, he tends a large garden with his spouse Miriam, and together they often disguise themselves as beekeepers. Michael's topic, Touch the Wounds, reminds us that to see pain, suffering, and poverty of our world, we need to touch these wounds with faith and action. These actions restore our hope and courage in ourselves and others. But let us begin our sacred part of the service with the lighting of our chalice. It represents the light of our reason, the warmth of our community, and the flame of hope for us in our church family. This morning, we invite Ruby to come up here and help us with the chalice lighting. And Ruby is a first grade student. No, you're kindergarten, is that right? I messed that up, I'm sorry. Ruby is in kindergarten, thank you very much. And she does like to play soccer, so give her that. And as she lights the chalice with Beth's help, with those stubborn candles, Beth, will you repeat after me the words of our vision statement, and they should be printed in your order of service. We work together as a church to transform ourselves, our community, and our world by sharing love, pursuing justice, and seeking wonder. Thank you, Ruby, and I apologize. Today in our service, we have a time for all ages, a story that I think you'll find very interesting. So we invite the children to come down in front of the candles table in a circle. So Beth and her helper, Stephen, can deliver our story for all ages. And this is the time that the children can put their offering in. They decided to tackle the hunger in Tri-Cities, and they can put their money in the basket at this time if they wish. So Beth, you and Stephen, take it away.
This is a story called Thankful Dogs. Who's got a dog at home or knows a dog? Any of you? Oh, yeah, okay. Think about the dogs you know. They have different kind of voices, don't they? What kind of sounds do dogs make? Well, there's a bark. What else? We don't like that dog. Have you heard of baying? That's important because dogs do that in this story. Can you do it? Oh, awesome. We got it. Okay. The story is about thankful dogs because we're celebrating Thanksgiving, so it makes sense, right? Once there was and once there was not a family of dogs. Like many dog families, there were dogs that had wandered off the street, and dogs with fine pedigrees, and dogs from the shelter, and dogs that had been born into the family.
They ran together, they played together, they tumbled together in a great furry masses of tails and snouts and paws.
Doggy play. They loved each other very much, even if sometimes they growled at one another. Even if sometimes they worried about if there was enough biscuits from the tin on the counter for everybody. Even if some dog didn't feel good and they snapped at each other, they did love each other very much. Each night, every night, as the moon rose up in the sky, the family of dogs went outside and they sat in a great circle on the soft grass and they watched the moon rise. You've probably done that, haven't you? Watching the moon rise sometimes. They looked into each other's eyes and they wagged their tails. It was a doggy thing to do. Then, when the moon was about a dog's tail above the horizon, the oldest dog would bay loudly at the moon. And what do you think that dog was baying about? The eldest dog, the eldest dog was telling the other dogs and the moon and the whole world exactly what he was thankful for.
He was baying, "Thank you for this day, for the running and the jumping. Thank you for the biscuits and the tasty treats. Thank you for the little brown dog for nosing the ball my way. Thanks for being able to sing. Thanks for this and everything."
Oh, it was a beautiful song. And the youngest dog would point her nose to the moon and she began to bay. And she would say, "Thank you, wonderful sun that warmed my back. Thank you, lovely lilacs, for their sweet smells. Thank you, pack of dogs, for wiggly dances. Thank you for the music of the ice cream truck. Thanks for this and all my luck." Then one dog after another would join the baying, saying their thanks until they were singing together and to the moon. But they saved the best for last and they howled together. Well, we'll show you what they said and then you can join us, okay?
Thank you, Mother, and thank you, Father. Thank you, Sister, and thank you, Brother. Thank you, Neighbor, and thank you, Friend. Thank you, Stranger, and thank you, World. We share our thanks for every being, whether near or far, no matter who, no matter where, no matter what you are.
Thanks. They did this no matter what the weather, no matter how many or how few of the family was home together, no matter how they felt. The dog family gathered together each and every night to greet the moon and share their thanks. So why don't you join me, and we can ask the adults to help us with this. Stephen and I will say it once and you guys join us, okay? Thank you, Mother, and thank you, Father. Everybody. Thank you, Mother, and thank you, Father. Thank you, Sister, and thank you, Brother. Thank you, Sister, and thank you, Brother. Thank you, Neighbor. Thank you, Friend. Thank you, Neighbor. Thank you, Friend. Thank you, Stranger. Thank you, World. Thank you, Stranger. Thank you, World. We share our thanks for every being, whether near or far. We share our thanks for every being, whether near or far, no matter who, no matter where, no matter what you are. No matter who, no matter where, no matter what you are. Thanks. Nice job.
Okay, so I'm going to give a practice bay, and then I'm going to invite everybody to bay, and you can bay your own special Thanksgiving message. So we're going to bay, and it's going to go like this. Ow!
Can you do it?
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Ow!
Sweet messages. Okay, as you return to your seats, I hope you remember all the things that you're thankful for.
But each week we enter into a part of our service that allows us to share joys and sorrows of our church family. And we invite each of you to hold ourselves in love and trust as we celebrate these joys close to our heart and our sorrows as well. Come to this community with all you are. Your joys and concerns are welcome here. We do this in 3 different ways, and one is that we complete a candle card, like this right here. And you can find them located on the back side of the counter there near the library. And when you can send these, either give them to the service leader on the day of the service, or you can email just electronically to our Reverend. If you do, minister@hvuuc.org. But the main thing is that you tell her whether you want them read out loud or kept private. So, and I do have several cards today. So, and one is I have from Beth Calvert and Martha Rubenstein. And it's in honor of their brother, Steve, and it's would be his 75th birthday. So we light a candle. Go ahead and do that. We can light a candle, Alex will, for Steve in recognition of his life with them. So we also light a candle of concern for the many trans friends who were pushing through every day as themselves. So a card of encouragement there. We also have a card of sadness. They're the death of Brittany Anderson's father. He passed away suddenly on the 11th. And please hold them close to heart as they are grieving for that loss. So Brittany Anderson's father. And I hope I can get through this. We have a candle of sadness for the Boyd family, Richard and Joy Boyd. Richard died suddenly on Thursday, passed away after complications from liver cancer that he was receiving. Not trying to keep this away from our congregation, but Richard and Joy were trying to get a little bit more information before they shared this information with our congregation. So as we seek ways to care for Joy, let us also care for each other in our grief and loss for our special Richard. And we hold these close to heart for all the joys and sorrows. And this is a reminder too, Richard's memorial service will be held on Saturday, December 7th at 1 o'clock here at the church. And that will be posted on our website in case you don't remember that. And it seems appropriate time to remind us all that during times of joys and sorrows, we get support from our Reverend Tiffany. So if you are interested and need to have her support, please contact her at minister@hvuuc.org, and you can schedule an appointment with her. So don't hesitate to reach out if you are in need of that. So you can take just a second to digest those candles as you think about your own silent candles. And the second way that we share our joys and sorrows is if you light your own candle, and you may do that by approaching the side of the candle that's closest to you. Either Roger will help on one side and Alex will help on the other. And they would very much appreciate it if you would start at the candles in the back so nobody gets scalded with the flame. So as James plays music, if you can come up to either side of the table and light your own candle, you may do that now. And while you are making your way to the candles, the third way, if you would like, is if you'll raise your hand so I can see you, I'll make sure that you get a candle lit for you. If you'll just raise your hand until I acknowledge you. See? And we know there are many unspoken and unwitnessed candles, so I ask the candle lighters to light one final candle in recognition of all the words that are unspoken and the ones that are not here for us today. In our candles this morning, we saw and heard joys as well as sorrows, many wounds and many joys. Our speaker this morning, Michael Woods, delves deeper into this notion of touching wounds and the healing power of doing so. He reminds us that we can only become our truest selves, our most holy and helpful selves, when we touch the wounds of God by not turning away from suffering, but by confronting it. Please welcome Chaplain Michael Woods.
Okay, well, it's good to be back with you all again. It's been, I can't actually remember the last time, maybe a year or so away. Anthony DeMello is a spiritual writer, and I love this story he tells. A man with a young son, and who knocks on his son's door in the morning and says, Jimmy, it's time to get up. It's time to go to school. And Jimmy says, I don't want to go to school. He says, oh, why not? Asks his father. And Jimmy gives him 3 reasons. He says, well, it's dull. The kids tease me. And, well, quite frankly, I just hate school, to be honest. And the father says, I see. Well, I'm going to give you 3 reasons why you should and must get up and go to school. First, it's your duty. Second, you're 45 years old. And third, you're the principal of the school. Get up, wake up. It's time to go to school. Stop playing with your toys. I love that story, and it speaks of part of what it means to have a healthy spirituality that awakens us and moves us to an ever maturing spirituality to become our truest selves, our most holy, most hopeful selves. Central to this endeavor, which can sometimes take a lifetime, is having the courage to touch the wounds in the world, which are the wounds of God or higher power, transcendent, whoever that is in your journey, and not by turning away from them. So this we want to explore. I want to say something about spirituality, what's a healthy spirituality, and I want to tie this into a story about touching wounds. It's true, I stole the title of this, Touch the Wounds, from a very, very powerful book I want to recommend by Tomáš Halík. He's a Czech philosopher and theologian and a priest. He lives in Prague, is a pastor of a parish there, and teaches at the university. And the book is called Touch the Wounds, on suffering, trust, and transformation. Just take up and read. It's a very profound book. All of his writing is. But part of Halik's wider project is engaging with a people who no longer really identify with organized religions or affiliate with a church tradition. The spiritual but not religious, which could mean a whole range of things. These are people with questions, questions about God, about spirituality, about church, all that. And over the years of my time at the VA, and even before that, I've been at the VA about seven years now, I began to reflect and collect a series of sort of kind of guiding principles, what I think is sort of constitutes a healthy spirituality. And I want to share those with you. Because in part, many of the veterans that I'm encountering for a range of reasons find themselves in those circumstances. It's like, here's my usual question. I go into it gently. I'll say, like, are you in church? And why not? But rather, in the past or the present, have you been connected to a church or a faith community, right? So it leaves it kind of open for them to kind of respond. And a very common response is, well, raised up in church, but, not there anymore. I kind of stopped going years ago. And their reasons are varied, but so I'm trying to find ways to help them kind of connect to something bigger than just being in church, right? Certainly spirituality is not limited to that. So here goes. Basic definition that I use with them. Spirituality is a way of seeing and being in the world that lends meaning and value and purpose to our lives, and it connects us to God, transcendent, a higher power, our most truest selves, connects us to others, connects us to creation. Very, very broad. You could have a spirituality of woodworking based on that, right? Art, anything could kind of fall into that. But it connects us to others, it gives us purpose and meaning. Healthy spirituality welcomes and explores deep questions, right? Oftentimes these veterans come to me and say, I have questions about the Bible. And they just couldn't even ask those in a church because it would be like a judgment against their faith. Like, what do you mean you can't ask questions? I'm thinking, no, God transcendent puts that in us. We have to be able to ask those questions. A healthy spirituality allows for ambiguity and uncertainty. We have the humility to say, I just don't have the answers. Right? But I want to also say that's probably mystery as well. And when I say mystery, not something to be solved like the Agatha Christie novels, but rather something to be lived into, that we kind of trust living into not having all the answers, and that life is in many ways a mystery. A healthy spirituality fosters curiosity and empathy and compassion for ourselves and for others. Those two always go hand in hand. A healthy spirituality does not avoid our shadow sides, right? Looking at some of those darker aspects of our own personhood, to be honest about who we are. In kind of traditional spirituality, we liken that to forms of asceticism, right? Practices that kind of scrape away all that's sort of false or not authentic in us, right? To get away and to get down to the truth of who we are. If people are familiar with the spiritual writer Thomas Merton, he was very, very strong on that. A healthy spirituality is embodied, that we have some peace and contentment with this given body of ours, and that it has the capacity to carry love and compassion and mercy and justice, that these bodies right here can carry that and share it. A healthy spirituality enables us to lean into reality with more courage and not avoid kind of the harder and tougher places in life where we find suffering. To do so means that we have to have some spiritual freedom inside, things that kind of prevent us from being generous. A healthy spirituality also fosters belonging, right? And the value of, say, belonging to a religious tradition is that you already have kind of the structure and pieces in place. You don't have to come each Sunday and figure it out, or like what you're going to do, or the order of service, thanks to Wanda and Rosemary and all the others who kind of contribute to having an orderly service. But the traditional practices just kind of help us with the rituals, the moral framework, our community service, right? This community is an example of that. So it gives us a place where we can work out some of these things. And then finally, I would just say, this is not an exhaustive list, of course, but a healthy spirituality has dimensions of sacrifice. We just got to kind of give up stuff. We got to kind of lay down our lives for others. Not always make it about myself, okay? And that also gives us, I think, this courage to touch the wounds, to courageously and generously enter into the vulnerabilities of hurting people. That's a quick list. Of course, all those kind of themes could be in whole talks in themselves. I want to tell a story, and it comes from the scriptures, the Bible. And some of you may be very familiar with this story. It's a story about seeing and being in the world. It seeks to awaken us. And it's the story of the Good Samaritan. So bear with me. You probably have all heard that story. It comes from Luke chapter 10. Just then, a lawyer of the religious kind, not kind of civil lawyers, stood up to test Jesus. He says, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" He said to him, "Well, what is written in the law? What do you read there?" He answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The lawyer said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." The title, Good Samaritan, is actually not in the actual scriptures. It's a title that we have given it. But to actually say the words good and Samaritan in the same sentence would have been blasphemy to a faithful Jew in Jesus' time. They do not go together. Samaritans were this impure race and these outcasts. They didn't deal with them. But when you read the scriptures, Jesus has a number of encounters with Samaritans. What's the point of that story, right? Break out of your little tiny worlds and be with all people. So this timeless parable is not just simply about the golden rule, though. In it, he's giving us a way to see and be in the world all the time. And the parable shatters all religious, political, and socio-political boundaries. This is about a universal call to love all people. Now, nowadays, I always get nervous when someone starts off by saying, you know, there's just two kinds of people in the world. And I'm thinking, well, that's pretty boring of a God of the universe. You know, this is like just two? You know? But you know, what they're, of course, saying is they're just trying to simplify life's messiness and complexities. This is just easier to deal with. So that is not a healthy spirituality. There's two kinds of people in the world. So I was reading something, and I was reading someone who I esteem greatly in the many people I read and reflect with. And he was reflecting on this parable, the Good Samaritan. And sure enough, out of his mouth, and in his pen, says, you know, there are just two kinds of people in the world. And I'm thinking, for heaven's sakes, you know, there goes my theory about, you know, just, I would never have thought he would say that. And then he kind of lowers the boom. He says, there are two kinds of people in the world. Those who stop, bend down, and touch the wounds, and those who don't. Ouch. Now I'm a little wounded by that, right? Those who stop, bend down, and touch the wounds, and those who don't. It's kind of true. So how can we get there to be those people? That line comes from Pope Francis. And he, you know, speaks elsewhere about churches becoming field hospitals. Not just kind of staying in our comfy buildings and monasteries and waiting everybody to come to us, but like we should be out there on the battlefield, right? Because he says, you don't ask a seriously wounded person about their high cholesterol or their blood sugar, right? You ask them, right? You tend to their immediate wounds and then talk about other issues. In order to touch these wounds, they must first be uncovered or exposed. So Thomas Halik, in his book, Touch the Wounds, he's using this story from John's Gospel, where Thomas encounters Jesus after the resurrection, and he appears to him, and he shows him his wounds and invites him to touch them, because Thomas was the doubting one. He didn't believe what he had heard. And in that scene, Jesus shows all of these traumatized, fearful, guilt-laden disciples how to be courageous, to take off their armor, to take off the makeup or the masks that conceal their wounds. And in that, they will be able to go and do likewise. So first, assess your own interior wounds, and then go and do likewise and be a part of touching and healing the others. So we can only come to be our truest selves, our most holy and hopeful selves, when we stop, when we bend down and touch the wounds of the world and our own wounds. There are so many stories I could tell from veterans that I've worked with. I should probably adjust that intro about loving what I do. I do love what I do, but it almost makes me sound a little bit masochistic. I like to be I like immersed in all that stuff. But it's very meaningful and good work. But I want to share about one story, one veteran, and what it means to kind of bear some of their burdens with them. So I work on an acute care mental health unit. That means three things: make sure they're safe, make sure they're stable, and then get them out of there, right? But get them out of there with a better path going forward. Counseling, medications, connection to others in the community, etc. Okay, so many ways that we do that. A long-term treatment program or something. So I want to say also, this is not a story about, well, someone came to us wounded, they left us, and now they're healed. It is never, ever that simple, or rarely that simple, especially when we're dealing with deep spiritual and moral wounds. Okay? So I hope I can do justice to this rather complicated story. Here goes. I'll call him Mr. B, is a 75-year-old Vietnam War veteran who has a severe PTSD and moral injury. Trauma, PTSD, is something that happens to you. You witness something. Moral injury is something you do that kind of violates your interior code. I won't go into the details, but it was very, very messy on all sides. And he just locked it all away, like so many of them do. Just, I don't know how. They just somehow lock it all away. And so he's coming to us at 75. This has been like 50-some years. But here he is. He left Vietnam, came home, got married, had a couple of kids, went to work, was involved in his church, involved in the community. All seems fine. But not even his spouse of 50-plus years knew everything that had gone on. As so many, often with so many veterans, it was bad. Don't talk about it. Mr. B retires and things are more or less okay. And then his wife gets sick, cancer. And this, of course, disrupts his life and their life, for sure. And he fears her loss. And it unleashes a profound anxiety in him. It's just an anxiety he's never really ever experienced. And he's wondering what life is going to be like. How will he go on after all these years of marriage? Could he live without her? And he thinks and comes to the quick conclusion that no, I won't be able to. And therefore begins to enter thoughts of how he's going to exit right after her. And so he's with us also because he has some suicidal ideation. Historically, he's not a heavy drinker, but he starts to take an extra nip of the bottle to take the anxious edge off. And that becomes a little bit more and more until it's a lot. But let's be clear, alcohol is not his problem, right? That is not his wound. The veteran also had a tendency, when he came to us, when he met with the chaplain, to use pious platitudes. These are religious ways of not dealing with the hard stuff. They're those kind of simple, short answers that we can say, God's got this, or, right, God gave it to me and God will carry me through it. I mean, and it's not that I don't believe in those things, but it was a way of kind of just sort of not dealing with the heaviness of what he was feeling. Okay? His wounds were a profound shame and guilt of what all transpired in Vietnam for him. What was done to him, what he witnessed, his trauma, and things that he did and had others do. What exposes this wound? What exposes his concealed wound? I wish I could say, well, it was the VA and the chaplain who helped him, but it was not. It was the fear of losing his spouse. That's what uncovered the wound. And why? Because all their married life, his spouse was the moral and spiritual anchor of goodness in the world. And it was about to go away. And he freaked out. And that was precipitated his crisis. All his shame and guilt made him feel unforgivable and unlovable. Was joined to her faith in God, her embodied, faithful love and goodness and mercy and understanding toward him. She was kind of a moral and spiritual compass amidst his own kind of burden and darkness. So having her alongside him was what prevented him from being crushed by this burden. It kind of kept him going, kind of kept hope and light there. And now she might be taken from him. So as I said, the point on our ward is to just make sure they're safe and stable and get them on their way. But while there, it's to begin to touch some of these wounds and to be dealing with them a little more forthrightly. Of course, we have meds, which are very helpful, but we are more than our meds, right? Meds keep us stable and baseline to engage in life more fully, but we are more than our meds. So we also need to tap into this man's spiritual, right, and moral strengths and things that have been a part of his life, have sustained him to some degree. One of my best ways we talk about trauma is simply a wound that continues. The bad news, trauma never goes away. It's a fact of our lives. It's there. It's how we make that wound a part of our larger life narrative, right? Such that we're not defined by it, but rather it's a part of something much, much larger. So what could I do on the unit? Here's what we did. We sat at a table with pen and paper. We're in a room where we could just kind of have some privacy. I opened the Bible to Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. Many people maybe have known that. And I just want to say, you could actually feel this man's anxiety. The meds were starting to take effect and help him, but I love the root word for anxious or anxiety. It's a Latin word, angere, which literally means to choke or constrict. And if you stop about ever feeling anxious, we know how that feels. It just like kind of binds us and constricts us. So we close our eyes. We take some very long, deep breaths. And I slowly read the psalm aloud to him as he had his eyes closed. And then we began to hand write it out, slowly, one verse at a time. Just one verse, slowly write it out in our own hand. And we stop, we would take some deep breaths, and we go on to the next verse, all the way to the end. Now, remember, some of you I know maybe are familiar, a trauma is not just bad thoughts in the head. It's in the body as well. It lives in our whole being, really. And so it's not just a matter of controlling thoughts or intrusive memories and so forth, but it's about also regulating our body. And the slowing down, the meditative, the breathing, the writing is a tool to kind of help us have some sense of agency in that when we feel overwhelmed by it. We did this to the end of the psalm. And at the end, we stop, close our eyes, we take some more deep breaths, and then we read aloud together the psalm. And you could just tell something had shifted in him, right, at the end. And I asked him, I said, if you had to choose one verse that maybe really struck you out of all the verses in the psalm, I said, which would it be? And he said, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I quoted to him another psalm about God's merciful faith enduring forever. His wife's love and mercy endure forever. Her goodness and mercy and kindness will follow him all his days, whether she is here or not. And then he shares with me why this is true for him. And he gives stories of some 50 years of how his wife has come alongside and been this faithful, loving, merciful, understanding person. Did this heal his wound? Not by a long shot. But for a little while, it relieved this burden and this anxiety. It released the grip it had on him. And it gave him a tool that he could use at home. You can do this, a little exercise anywhere, I showed him. And he gained a healthier, a better perspective on the whole of his life narrative. That this wound and this burden that he carries is not there to define him, but is a part of a longer, loving and merciful narrative. Mr. B is still going. He's now about 77 or 8. His wife has passed. And God's and her merciful love and kindness endure. So a healthy spirituality emboldens us to be that one kind of person who stops, bends down, and touches the wound. And there are so many wounds, as we know. Out there, and right here, right? In this person, right? So let us try to boldly become that field hospital, becoming that nearness and proximity that touches the wounds and helps in some small way to bear the burden and be part of the healing so desperately needed. Amen.
Thank you, James. I see that special music didn't get put in our order of service, but a special thanks to James for that beautiful waltz in A minor by Frédéric Chopin, and he did a beautiful job with that. It helped me process some of the information that we've heard today, especially from Michael and our candles. So that was the crowning way for me to think about that, so thank you again. We end our service, formal part of our service, with the extinguishing of our chalice, and I'll ask Roger to come up and help do that. Sometimes that chalice is a little hard to deal with, so you might have to convince it to go out. That should be, it's down there on the table. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. Blessed be. Regrouping for our announcements. If you will follow along, I have a nice insert in your program, a number of announcements for this week. Foremost, coming up here in a few days is the communal potluck Thanksgiving meal. You have until middle of this week, Wednesday, I think, to let Rosemary know if you're coming and what you might be bringing to share there. So please remember to let her know that so she can plan on how many people are going to be there. So Rosemary is waving back there at the tech. The sign-up sheet, so don't just show up. You might have 5 bowls of potato salad or something. So which might not be a bad idea. The other thing happening real soon on Friday is the decorating of our giving tree on the 29th at 11 o'clock at Johnson City Commons Park. And the good thing is, if you've not brought anything, you still have an opportunity to do that. We're taking donations through the end of December, and a special community gathering is at the Friday night women's club, women's meeting. They're going to be filling some of those bags, so you've got an opportunity to bring something to that. It's going to be at Linda Good's home, if you want to make an acknowledge there for Linda. And if you come with yourself and your bag, or just come with yourself, and you can help stuff some of those. So that's Friday, December 6th, starting at 6:30 and ending around 9 o'clock. So please attend that if that is of interest to you.
Chili and cornbread.
Pardon?
Chili and cornbread.
Oh, wow, that's an incentive. Chili and cornbread, who could pass that up? So, again, at Linda's house, she's in Johnson City. If you want to howdy with her afterwards, then she's here to do that. The other thing is happening, this is our annual Green Arts Festival, and this is a wonderful way to shop for handmade, unique gifts. It's going to be immediately following the service. If you just make your way back past the kitchen area, you'll find an array of homemade items that are one of a kind and very beautiful. This is our annual Green Arts Festival. And I did ask Sally how that name came about, and it must be just kind of a mystery because we can't figure out how it came about, the Green Arts, but it's nice anyway, regardless of how it came about, the title. So, Cookie Exchange, you'll see more of your items printed in your brochure. I won't continue to do that. And if you miss the handout, if you hear our service on YouTube, you can go on our webpage under events and news and read all about anything that I happen to have left out. So please avail yourself to any activity that interests you. We thank you so much for being here today, and I hope you have felt the love and strength of our community, because we certainly needed it today. You can learn more about what we're doing, as I said, from the news and event, and Rachel's going to lead us in our closing hymn, and I hope that within the words of that hymn you will feel an uplifted spirit all around you and around others with you. So, Rachel.
Also, this is the time that we pass around the offering. The contributions that you make during the offering supports the way that we build each other up as a community and also helps us reach out to the vaster community as well. Also, you can make one second. If you want to make a pledge payment, just mark it as such in an envelope and we'll be able to go from there. Thank you guys so much. Please join us in Rise in Body or Spirit for 10:53 in the smaller teal hymnal.
In the days ahead of us, we will gather with family and friends, people with whom we may have long and sometimes complicated relationships. It helps to prepare. Let us enter into the spirit of prayer and meditation. This benediction is called A Prayer for the Holidays with Families by Suzanne Intraligator. She's a UU minister in Melrose, Massachusetts. Dear Spirit, great mystery that has blessed us with life, help us to be grateful. We give thanks in this moment for lungs that breathe in and out, for hearts that beat, and for bodies that work. We give thanks for this coming holiday gathering, however and with whomever we will spend it. We give thanks to be alive, to be able to mark the day in whatever way we choose. We give thanks for family, for friends, for those who gather around us in body or in spirit, in flesh or in memory. We give thanks for all those people who came before us, who, flawed and sometimes damaged as they were, loved us into being, shaped us into who we are now. We remember them with gratitude. We give thanks for mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers. They did their best. We give thanks for wacky uncles and rebellious aunts, for rambunctious cousins and unexpected guests. We give thanks for long car rides, dashes through airports, and endless rounds of Monopoly. We give thanks for the awkward conversation, the strained pause, and even the slammed doors. We give thanks for disagreements that forced us to grow and move and evolve. We give thanks for all of it, all of it. For all these wild and hungry people, our family, our friends, our congregation, people just as flawed as we are, all dealing with more than we can see, and all part of a larger whole. Every last one doing their best. We give thanks for the glory of being alive. Amen. And